Joel Rutherford made an extra $1.6 million in the first 4 months of this year. How? By hiring for one simple role. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with Joel to understand how hiring a project manager helped him produce an entire year's worth of revenue in just 4 months, the hiring process he used to find a rockstar capable of adding that much value, and why so many contractors completely botch their project management, and how to stop killing your profits as you grow. If you're struggling to scale and want to stop being the bottleneck in your operations, this episode is for you. You're watching Contractor Revolution, the podcast by Breakthrough Academy, where we systemize contracting businesses for growth. Keep watching to learn how the world's top contractors scale their companies, build killer teams, and make more while working less. Joel Rutherford, welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
We are going to talk about some pretty neat growth you've had over the last little while and what unlocked it. But you went from $3 million a year to $2.4 million in just 4 months. What happened?
Last year at the end of the year, we had a great run of sales in the area. And as part of that, we were able to bring on a project manager, and it's been a real game changer for us.
Yeah, this is what I want to circle today's talk around, because I think that a lot of people are at a state in business where it's like, do I hire a PM? There's some overhead to it. I've got to give up some control. Do I not hire a PM and just keep managing through it? Now, this was a pretty large amount of work that came all at once. But what kind of got you to just finally decide to do this versus avoiding it and taking all that extra work on yourself and managing the whole thing?
Well, it was a conversation between my coach, Matt Balf, and myself. And, I was talking to him about the projects that had come in. And he says, Joel, how are you going to do all this work? He said, you don't have the staff to do this. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I guess I'm going to go back to the field. And then we took that conversation and he kind of started to help me see how, if I did go back to the field, then our sales would suffer. And then, the latter part of this year, we're in emergency mode because we don't have enough sales. And so that was kind of the genesis of it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, yeah, sure, short term, you could take care of it, but then what's the gap you're going to create long term?
Exactly.
What before you had hired this role, what were you still doing personally in the company? What was your day-to-day kind of looking like?
Well, I was doing everything in the office, had some help with financials, but managing customer selections, trying to document those selections as best I could with the time I had, sales, estimating customer meetings, job site visits, quality control, it was a lot.
If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, but have never actually reached out, I encourage you to make today that day. See, taking your business to the next level takes a whole lot more than just listening to a podcast. It takes coaching on your goals. It takes proper implementation of those ideas, and it takes a like-minded peer group who's been where you're about to go. So stop playing around with your business and let's take this thing seriously. Book a call below and let's start the conversation. What was that going smoothly? Was it not what delays were getting created as you being kind of the bottleneck of all things in that state?
Oh yeah, man. The delays were all, it was all mine. I owned all the delays pretty much. It was, sometimes one thing we had trouble with was documenting our selections. So, that was kind of something that got swept to the side. And then you got customers coming back saying, that's not what I said, and that's not what I wanted. And that's a whole debacle there. So yeah, it was a few tough months there.
Yeah. I guess for you, when did you realize that something had to change, or did Matt need to shake you a little bit? Were you kind of just stubbornly, I'm going to go do this? Or were you when did you realize I can't do this anymore? This doesn't work.
Yeah, it was that process or that conversation with Matt that was really the catalyst. But to be honest with you, prior to that, I was kind of noticing, hey, I'm not on top of this as much as I was 6 months ago, just because we had grown some. And so I was noticing a few things that were starting to slip and kind of get through the cracks.
Looking back, I know you're in a different state now, but what do you think it was costing you maybe that you weren't even acknowledging at the time? Looking back reflectively.
Well, there's no doubt to me what it cost, and it was profit,
Mm.
just the fact that once we got this person on board and we got him up and running, our our job velocity increased substantially. So we're able to put more work through the business now, get more money for our dollars of overhead, and yeah, that's what we were losing out on mainly. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't slip out of the office a little bit early on Fridays now that he's he's handling things. So that's been nice.
Did it ever initially feel risky at all? Was it kind of like, I don't know if I should actually do this, or were you all in day one with Matt on this?
No, it felt well, I'll say this is my kind of philosophy or feeling on the thing. Um, it did feel scary.
Mm.
It felt scary even after I hired him. But since I've been in business, I've kind of come to realize that if I feel a little bit of trepidation about a move that I'm about to make or a decision that I'm going to make, that's my indicator that it's probably the right thing to do. If I feel 100% comfortable about it, I'm probably not stretching enough or pushing hard enough.
Yeah, let's dive into this a little bit, because I can imagine there's people listening right now that are like, I know I need to do this. I know I should have done this a while ago, but it's what you're describing is like stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Tell me about the fears. Tell me about what you had to work through. Tell me about kind of what you've learned from that. Just the thought process of replacing yourself, which is a big move, right?
Yeah, it was a huge move for us. And it was something that I told my guys as we started to go through the process that, you can't grow in comfort. You only grow in stress. And the things that were on my mind during that time were, do we have enough? Are we going to have enough work? Are we going to be able to sustain the sales, to keep paying this person? And are we good enough? Are we organized enough to even have this person here? Because, we went out and hired a very talented individual. And that was something that I kind of had to get over is, maybe, hiring somebody that's more talented or smarter than I am, but at the end of the day, if you're not smarter than I am, you're not doing much good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the most talented person here. I want other people around me that have more talent.
Joel, what's interesting about that, like, I think that the principle of that is always known. People are like, okay, as an owner, I got to hire people that are better than me around me. But you also mentioned there's a bit of like, it's an ego thing. I think it's like it's protecting us from like, but I don't want to be worthless. I don't want to be useless. I don't want to not be the charger and driver of the organization. How did you work through that?
Well, I've just kind of really just made the jump. I just jumped off the deck and took the chance. And then, as he came on and as he kind of got ramped up and I started to see the progress, I just started to feel better and better about it. And now, it's just excitement every day to see, how the business is running, especially with me knowing how it was when it was me sitting at my kitchen table, till 9 o'clock at night, and comparing that to where we are now, there's really no comparison.
Yeah. There's like this fear of the unknown is kind of creeping in. And then finally you're just like, okay, I think I get it now, but it takes a bit. There's always a bit of a transition.
It does.
Yeah,
it definitely does.
Let's talk a bit about like how you went about doing this. So I know like Matt, your coach, was like, we're going to do this. You finally, I guess, just succumbed. He was like, yeah, let's get it done. Otherwise I'm going to be piled up with work. How did you know what you're even looking for when it came to a hire? Like, did you profile yourself? Like, obviously you didn't, because you hired somebody quite different than you. So like, how did you know what to look for?
Well, working with Matt, that was invaluable. He really helped a lot with sort of talking me through and helping me to get comfortable with the kind of person that I was looking for. I worked through an employment agreement for this position. The BTA template it was great just to help understand, the deliverables, the responsibilities, and helped me to define the kind of person that I was looking for. And from that, I was able to realize, hey, we need a seasoned guy in here. We don't want somebody that's new to the industry. Was able to figure out that we needed someone who understood how to implement project schedules and had experience with that. And what we ended up getting is a guy that is from a town that's about 2.5 hours away from where we live. Just so happened that he wanted to move to the area, and he came up and we did a phone interview. By the way, that video that you've got on the BTA website was a lot of help with that. So we did the phone interview, and we got him up here, and it was a fit, from day one.
And
maybe not a total fit, but it was a good hire.
Why do you think you didn't move to just hiring from within first? Like, just let's promote somebody on the team to move into this position. Why did you go external?
I didn't feel like we had anybody on the team that fit the mold of what I was looking for. Like I say, I wanted somebody that I knew could come in here and could get this job done. And Heath came to us from like I say, another company, and they were closing 250 homes a year. Now, granted, we're a custom builder, and they were, I guess, kind of a halfway point between just spec houses and custom. So these were really nice spec houses, is what it comes down to. And he was over all of those houses. They closed 250 houses a year. He was the production manager pulling the strings. And when I started to understand his experience level, I thought, man, wow, this guy could really help us get where we want to go.
Yeah, it's a very different hire than the current culture that you had created. I don't know. How did you decide to go that route versus trying to just hire somebody that was, a good old boy, right? Somebody that's existed in the company, somebody you knew well. Like, you hired somebody and maybe help everyone listening understand, but you were not in the metropolis city. You hired somebody that's more metro. Just walk us through that a little bit, because it's a bit of a move, right? It's a bit of a different thing to do.
It was. It really was. And like we talked earlier, this is an area. It's in Northwest Alabama. It's kind of rural. There's not an interstate or an airport. Well, there is an airport, but it's very small. So it's just kind of a small area, and it's kind of insulated from a lot of the things that a bigger city come with a bigger city. And there's just a lot of good, I guess, salt of the earth, hard working, just country boys around here. And, that's...
What are you trying to say about us city folk?
Do I?
No, I'm just teasing you. I was like, what are you trying to say about the rest of us city folk?
Oh, man, I know how y'all are. But, to bring Heath in here from a larger city, he's a city boy, to the core, and so there was a time there where I think there was a culture shock for Heath.
Yep.
Getting to know some of the subs we have and some of the people we have working here as well. And I know there was some times there where there was some friction with some of the internal guys that we have here, just because he's very direct, and we're, being from the country, we're a little more laid back and, don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but Heath's very direct, and he is sort of a take charge kind of guy. And that's what we needed. I like that about him.
And so I'd imagine even everybody listening, when you're looking to replace yourself or somebody else to manage, a large part of your organization, actually, what are the things you've learned from this about how to just integrate somebody well into the culture, how to kind of create that bridge so that they can come in and be successful with this team that, you know very well, but they know very little, right? I'd imagine, like you said, there's some skepticism. How'd you work through that?
Well, one thing that worked in our favor is that, I have my father, he works for me. And he's a very, very outgoing, gregarious, one of these guys that everybody likes. And so I kind of had that in my back pocket, and I could say, "Hey, Dad, I need you to talk this guy up to the other guys that work here, and to the trades." So that helped. But I think at the end of the day, the main thing is once they started seeing the value that Heath brought to the table, and they could see the positive change in the business, I think that was a big plus. And I also think it's just as the leader of this company and the owner, I was dedicated to it, and I was determined, that it was going to work. So there wasn't there's no backing up. I made the decision to move forward in this direction, and I'm in it, and I never let any of the guys think that there was another way.
Was there any major conflicts you had to work through with this that like kind of you even want to speak to a bit? You don't have to maybe say all the names, but it's like some big like, okay, this has got to be talked through. Otherwise this is going to be lingering and affect performance for the company.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There definitely was, when Heath came in, and we had been already doing a production meeting every week, but he came in and he made it a lot more formal. I handed it off to him. I said, "Hey, this is your meeting. You run it. I'm in the meeting," but he sits at the head of the table and I sit at the side because I want to support him, and I want the people that work here to see him as a production manager. So that was one thing I did. And, there was a couple of those meetings where it got really heated, and the accountability that Heath brought to the table that, I just didn't have the time to implement some of this stuff. That made our site managers very uncomfortable for a while. And they would come to me with these grievances and complaints, and I just continued to tell them, this is growth, man. You're getting there. This is growth. We ended up having to let one of our site managers go. He never really just got on board with it. I actually had to have a conversation with this particular guy right before I let him go. And I had to say, "Heath is your boss. You do what he says."
Yeah.
But he just would not accept it. He just never would accept it. And I think a lot of what he was struggling with is just, he's really like a down home country boy, and he wants to do things his way. And this is the way my papa did it, and all of that kind of mess. And just never would adopt it. But I mean, I think that's just important, that if you're going to hire a project manager, you got to support him. You gotta, if you disagree, you gotta disagree behind closed doors, but you present a united front against your people, and just make up your mind and don't back off of it.
Yeah, it sounds like you did two things really well. One is you let him take charge, which is, for a lot of people, it's hard to do. Like, as much as we're great leaders, great leadership is to actually be able to step back and let others lead in front of us. And that takes a lot. So kudos to you for doing that. And I think there's a lot of lessons in that. And I think the other thing is that you stood by him against other people that have been around for maybe a little longer, right? Where they feel like, hey, I should have a say here because I've been around for a while, versus, hey, this is actually where we're going. And it's important to acknowledge that. I mean, almost every time you put a new leader into an organization, there's going to be some drop off. There's going to be some other people. How did you did you prepare for that? Did you expect that? How did you kind of manage through that? Or was that, you kind of knew that was coming that way when you brought him in?
Well, I've been in organizations before where there was change. So I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. I knew it was going to be difficult. I didn't realize the amount of pushback that I was going to get from different people in the organization, and even some of our trade contractors that have been with us a while. They really pushed back on some of it. And I realized that it was going to be a lot harder than I thought it was. And I knew that it was going to be hard for longer than I thought it was. And I had to have that conversation with some of my guys. They're like, "Well, I knew this would be a little different for a while." And I said, "Well, you were wrong." I said, "It's going to be hard, very hard for quite a while. So strap in and get
Put
ready.
on your big boy pants. Let's go."
Yeah, pretty much. One of the guys who is one of our site superintendents, who does a fabulous job. I think the light kind of came on for him one day when he was in here again, giving me all of his grievances, and I don't like this, I don't like that. And I said, look, man, you're looking at this all wrong. I said, this guy has come to us from, Birmingham, Alabama, closed 250 homes last year. I said, think of the opportunity you've got here to learn from this guy. I said, Heath he's not at the end of his career, but he's probably got 8 or 10 more years left. And I told my site superintendent, I said, hey man, if you really dig in here and learn from him, you might be ready to replace him when he gets ready to retire. And I think that, from that point, he was a lot more receptive. And I think that was kind of an aha moment for him. And, since then, at this point now, he's calling Heath and just asking for direction and, getting help. And I really feel like he's learning and absorbing a lot of information.
Yeah, that's a really strong, solid example of what we call like a reframe. It's like you come in with an objection and you turn that objection actually into a positive. And it's like good on you, Joel, just for like the type of leadership that takes. Cause again, it's pressure from the team and it's easy to just side with their opinion because you've known them for a lot of years versus to stand up and actually speak truth. How important do you think this is, this type of like culture mixing and getting buy-in from the team versus the SOPs of training and developing a role? And because, I find we talk a lot about how to, build SOPs and get somebody oriented in the company. But what we're talking about today is actually more what I would call like right tracking, like ensuring they're actually aligned with the company. Is there any like just key nuggets that we could take from all of what you've just said or just things to be aware of for those who are starting to think about doing this?
Well, I think that you support, like we talked about earlier, you support your person. If you have a disagreement, you do it behind closed doors, but you support them. And it's very easy when you've been running the business almost by yourself for a number of years, because it's all just second nature to you. The projects almost like the back of your hand. You do the estimates, you see it from beginning to end. And when your guys call you, it's super easy just to pop that question out, pop that answer to them because but I fell into that a few times for sure. But what I started to realize after 2 or 3 iterations of that was that I needed to push those guys, even if I knew the answer, I still need to get them to call their boss and get the answer from them. Because number one, if I'm giving the answer, I'm leaving this project manager out of the loop. So they don't know what's going on with the job. And number two, by doing that, you're taking away their ability to be successful at the job. And as like we talk about all the time in BTA, you can make yourself the bottleneck if you continue to answer those questions and handle those issues.
Yeah, I call it, you kind of got to handcuff yourself and be like, I know the answer, but I can't move. I'm not allowed to. You got to go here. Yeah. And then that practice becomes the way things operate. But if you just let it go and you're like, I can solve it right now for you, just let me take care of it. You like you said, you undermine the other person. And what was the point of hiring that person then? Otherwise, it just goes back to them being maybe a little helper off of what you already take care of.
And it's kind of it. I'll say this too. It's a weird feeling at this point in the business because I don't know every detail of every project. Whereas before I knew everything. So sometimes I get questions from the customers that I feel like I should know, and I have to get back to them, or sometimes, and this is another thing, I don't want to take up too much time rambling, but another thing you got to do, not only do you have to push your employees to the project manager, you've also got to push your customers to the project manager. They need to go and get those questions answered by him, even if you can answer it yourself, just because that's your new process. And one thing I've learned about processes is they're there to help you. If you don't follow the process, you make your job harder. So
I find the owner is usually the worst culprit of following process. They'll write it up
Yeah.
for everyone else and then they'll not follow it for themselves. This is, let's get into this a little bit. So like for the customer, because this is also a big one where I hear this from a lot of guys. They're like, well, the customer always wants to call me. And if they can't call me, then they're not going to feel serviced. And hey, I booked the job. So like, I feel like I'm ditching them. And how did you work through that? How did you set the expectation of the customer right? Maybe where did you get it wrong in the beginning? And how have you figured it out, at this point?
Well, there were a few jobs that we were almost done with when he came on board. So I just finished those out. But I really did exactly what I told you. When the customers would call me, I would just say, hey, I've hired Heath now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to him about this, and I'm going to have him call you back. So that way you're not just kind of blowing them off or whatever. You are closing the loop, and after a few times of that, they realize, oh, I need to be calling Heath on this. Yeah. And there's one example of this that's a little bit unique. Right now, we're building a home for my cousin, and he's really more like a brother to me. And, he's the last person I want to just pawn off, and I want to help this guy. But I told him and his wife, when we started the project, I said, guys, when we get started, I'm gonna let y'all direct your questions to Heath. And I said, it's not like I'm just pawning y'all off. It's not like I don't want to bother with you. But I said, the way we're set up now, he's going to be able to service you much better than I can. I said, if I get involved in it, the ball's going to get dropped. So talk to him, You
put the power in his hands, and you gave it to him right away. It's good. For you, like, what was the unlock for you? What's changed now? When did that start for you? What are you able to do now as an owner? What you weren't able to do? What has this done for you?
There's a couple of things that I can do now, and a couple of things I can do now that I couldn't do before, and there's some things that I can do better now, that I couldn't do as well before. Now, I can focus really on sales and getting out in front of people, because the product that we provide is, your average person is not going to, they're not going to do business with us, because we provide a high-end home to the highest quality standards that we can. And it costs more to do that. So what I've been able to do is to do more work just in getting out in front of those people that can use our services. So that's been instrumental in moving the business forward. Another thing that I can do better now is sales. Same thing really, but there's a different aspect of it. When we brought Heath on, the thing that I wanted him to do and had been wanting to get into the business, implement in the business, is project schedule. I had tried 2 or 3 different times, and it was just like I had too much. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it all. So failed 2 or 3 times. So that was the main thing that he was tasked with. Day one, we want all our jobs on a project schedule. So he started working on that immediately. And part of that is customer selections. We've got the project schedule implemented now. Now the selections, we're working on getting that more organized and more streamlined so we can provide a better customer experience. And what I noticed is, now that we have all of this stuff implemented and we have it on our CRM, which is JobTread, when I get people that come into the office now, met with some people last Friday, and I had really just badgered them into coming in and letting them see what we do. These people own a construction business, and they were not planning on doing business with us. Well, after they came in and I walked them through our process and how we've got it dialed in and we've really got it worked, I think we went from about a 30% chance of getting the job to now I feel like it's a 90% chance we'll get it. But what was really cool is they own this construction business. They're sprinkler installers. They're going to go home and implement our CRM into their business. So just having all of that dialed in and being able to sit down with the customer and show them really exactly how we do things and what they can expect, that's huge for our sales. And I would have never gotten all of that implemented on my own. I had to have some help.
It sounds like two things. It's like, one, put people to their strengths. Like, your strengths may not be to build out and implement all these systems yourself sitting in your desk alone. And it never was. And no matter how good the idea was, which you knew what it was, the idea was there. It never fully got done until you had somebody who that's what they've done for most of their career, right? They're better at it than you. Being good with that. And then the other thing I'm just catching what you're saying is just presence. You're present. You're present with your people. You're present with yourself. You're present with your customer. And that shows up in so many ways. And I think owners they misjudge the amount of importance it is to be a present leader versus just to be a busy leader. And I've been through both. I mean, I'm sure you will. We all go through our highs and lows in business, but it's like, man, when we are not present, the amount of people time that is behind us that gets wasted is wild. And so even in just listening to you today, but it's like the cost of not having this role is much greater than the cost of paying somebody an overhead salary to do this. As long as an owner, you can take that time and use it to actually drive new innovation and sales into the organization. But you got to be, yeah. I guess just for everyone listening right now, any other just like thoughts on just like, when should someone decide to do this? When's the right time to replace yourself and put in a PM to take over the project? When's the wrong time? How do somebody judge that?
Well, for us, it was the sales. For us, it was having that backlog and having the confidence. I guess you could call it confidence. I didn't feel 100% confidence, but just having the enough work lined up that I felt like we could support this person. But I'll also say this, I feel like it was the right time to do it because of the amount of work we had, but I wish I could go back and hire him earlier, because some of the nightmare jobs that we experienced in the first part of last year, I can think of one in particular that would have actually been a sweetheart job, but it was just, there was too much to manage. And so I would say, you have to do it at the right time, but you don't want to wait too long. If you feel like you have the sales and you feel like you have sort of the infrastructure in place, we had some site superintendents, we had some, some internal employees. We've got an office manager / bookkeeper. So we kind of had the infrastructure there. It was just, we needed somebody that could come in and take over the construction, make it work. And so once we had those in place, that was the right time for us.
Yeah, there is a trend to this actually across membership. I've seen it's usually office admin first, and or site supers. From there, you would move to your PM roles and start to hire those out and replace yourself. And then the one that you haven't done yet, that's final, is the sales. And that's usually the last one to go in a company. And so I think you've done it in the right kind of order. And it's slowly just looking at like, what's the opportunity cost that, this role, basically provides if we don't do it versus if we do. And then what's the overhead for this? And the biggest thing, and Joel, I'm not sure if you did this with Matt, but to actually work out how much revenue do we need to produce to cover this role? So if this is a $100,000 a year role, and we make, 20% margin off of the projects, how much dollars revenue do we need to produce to cover that $100,000? I had to do the quick math, but I think it's about $500,000 worth of revenue to cover that $100,000 salary. Okay. Can I cover that with more time? Can I cover that if I'm more present? Can I go and the answer is probably yes. Right. But it's just realizing that along the way and just doing a bit of that.
Yeah. You can't get complacent though. We hear and my social media, I'm just inundated with people trying to give me systems where I can not be a part of my business. I can just let other people run it. But for me, once we brought Heath on, I have to step on the gas a little bit harder. Our build times are shrinking every day. And that's a good thing because that's more, more profit, more revenue. But I've got to sell more now and I've got to sell quicker. A job that would have lasted 9 to 10 months for us a year and a half ago, now we're down to about 6 or 7 months. So, that really puts the pressure on me. The good thing is, I have the time now to do those sales calls and make sure that I'm, babying those leads and getting them on paper.
Yeah, you had mentioned this in our prep call that there was actually two things. You said that now that Heath is in, I've got some more pressure on me. You mentioned one was I got to book more work, but you also mentioned that you yourself had to level up. Do you want to speak to that a bit?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Just, kind of being on top of things more, than I was because, you got this new guy here, that's killing it. You don't want to forget a meeting or something and embarrass yourself. And getting out and communicating with the employees and pushing our message, which is, we want to be the best builder in our whole area. That's something that I'm constantly pushing, having those meetings with the guys, bringing them in and going through all that and just growing as a leader, holding people accountable, things of that nature. It really ticked up since he got here.
Yeah, suddenly you have accountability now too. There's someone in the office that's right there with you, and it's like their success is your success, and they're at a similar position that you were just at. So they could see all the good and bad and the ugly behind the curtain.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good thing. We all have, weak parts in our game that we need to level up, and then you need accountability. Everybody needs accountability.
I would agree. For those listening, I mean, there's some who have done this, some who are doing this right now, some who are hesitant to do it, but everybody I think listening knows and realizes there is some level of I need to replace some of the things I'm doing with other people to run the org. Any just final advice for everyone listening, or just the low-hanging fruit that maybe you really had to work through that would be effective for those listening?
If I were sitting with someone and they were considering bringing on a project manager and replacing some of themselves, if not all of themselves, my advice would be to, number one, you need to make sure that you have the sales to support it. Okay, that's an obvious one. You got to do that. But over and beyond that, I would say to go out and hire the best person that you can find and afford. Don't go for the bargain bin, find your guy and take the time to make sure he's going to be your guy. Because the accent is true that good people don't cost you money, they make you money. And that's really been the main thing that I've learned through this process is to get the best person for the job. If it costs more, just pay it and it'll pay off for you.
Yeah, that's a big mind shift for some people, right? Especially it's like I have producers that every time they produce, I bill their hours. And so I can get more of those all day long. But it's when you start hiring overhead roles where it's just like, wait a minute, this is going to cost me $100,000. Well, that's going to come right out of the bottom line. It's like, no, it shouldn't. And actually, what is one reason you think that cost doesn't come out of the bottom line? And I'll lead you a bit on this, but there's a way to structure this. Does Heath have KPI goals? Does he have to hit a number, an ROI to the company? Can you describe that? Because I do think that was one thing we didn't talk about today that might be important for those listening. How do you make sure when you hire a role, you can get a tangible ROI out of it?
Yeah, well, this was something that some of the BTA templates and Coach Matt really, really helped me with. And we have very specific goals for him. One example of the goals, the way our CRM is, we have our project schedule here, but our vendors and our customers have access to, our customers don't have the schedule, but our vendors have access to the schedule through a portal. So we want them looking at that. We want them using that. There's a way to see if they're using it on JobTread. And so I listed, I don't know, 25 or 30 subs that we had, and I put a dollar figure on every sub, and if these people are using JobTread at the end of the year consistently, then you're going to be paid this amount of money for every sub that's that's using it. He's also got some compensation that's tied to customer service, and we send out a survey about 25% of the way through the job to see how we're doing. So if there's some gaps, we can course correct. And then at the end of the job, we also send out some customer surveys. And so some of his compensation is tied to that. So yeah, it's just things like that. I think if you're setting that up, I think you need to get granular with it and be very specific. That was one of the things that he appreciated when he first came on, is that it was very clear to him how he could achieve his bonus. I don't know if you're supposed to call it bonus, but performance pay or whatever, it was very clear to him. And so we talk about that. And I mean, I never would have thought that I would say this, but if he hits all those goals, man, I'm going to be happy to pay him that bonus, because I know that hitting those goals has made us so much more profitable than what we would have been. Yeah, I mean, our monthly invoicing has increased over 400,000 compared to what it was last year. And I think last year monthly, we invoiced 8% of our total revenue for the year, so that was kind of our month. I don't know, something like that. But anyways, that's doubled. We're more than doubling our monthly invoicing every month. And that goes to that affects the bottom line. And it's true what they say that, good people make you money. They don't cost you money.
Joel, you've done a great job of this too, and setting up his success to be the company, your success. Like, you guys are aligned, which is a big piece of this, because it's not just an added overhead and weight with no accountability. Good work. Any final words or thoughts?
No, sir, I don't think so. I appreciate you guys having me. And I mean, I'll say this too. If there's anybody out there that is considering joining BTA, I would encourage you to go ahead with it. That's another thing, it's money well spent to get involved in this program. Running a business, it's difficult. It's very hard. It's lonely. There's not a lot of people that you can get help from, and just having a group of contractors that are like-minded and they're in the same business that you're in, that you can go once a month and bounce ideas off of, or just sometimes, we end up getting on a phone call with some of them and just asking advice. That's valuable. I mean, I would definitely encourage anybody that is thinking about it to go ahead and give it a shot.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, we put a lot of love, blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and it's cool to see the stories that come out of it. Because even just listening to you and the massive change you've made, I know that doesn't come easy, and I know that doesn't come just because you randomly decided to. There's a lot of thought and strategy that you put into making these moves. So good work.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, you got it, man. Okay, I'll let you go. Have a good week, and everyone else listening, maybe go hire a PM.
All right.
Maybe it's time.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Joel. As we all know, AI is monitoring even the micro clicks we make in these platforms these days. And YouTube has just updated its algorithm to recommend videos like this. It'll be different for everyone, but it'll know exactly what you're looking for next. So if you click here, you'll be happy that you did.